Boy, this Byron kid is the real deal. And he's turned into a really good road course ace. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Road course racing, where we turn left and right. There's so many twists and turns on these races, and there's a lot of strategy put into play. But from the moment we dropped the green flag on Sunday, one man was the guy all race long and was dominant from start to finish. Let's get into all that went down on our first road course race of the season in Texas. Number 1, Willie B dominates. William Byron was the dominant car all day yesterday as he captured his second win of the season, winning yesterday's EchoPark Automotive Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, beating out Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, and Tyler Reddick for the victory. I want to quickly point out for a second, this is 3 years in a row that our first repeat winner is William Byron. It happened in 2022, it happened in 2023 last year, and it's happened again this year. What a start William Byron is off to this year. Winning the Daytona 500 at the start of the season in February, then he had a little bit of a stretch where he wasn't really getting the results he'd hoped for. He had a top 10 at Vegas, but a chance to win the race was ruined when the trash bag got on the front of his grill, and he had to run the rest of the race to play catch up and got back into the top 10, but it was a little too late. And then you have last weekend's race at Bristol where they had a wreck and they just never recovered after they scraped the wall early on. They've had good race cars at the start of the season, but not a lot of luck to show for it other than their 500 win. But yesterday, everything went into place. He started from the pole after having the best car in qualifying, and from the moment the green flag dropped, that 24 car was a rocket ship. He was so strong in the long runs. He did sacrifice the stage wins to come in to get tires and fuel at the end of the stage for better track position when we started stage number 2. He was able to get some stage points because a couple other drivers also had the same agenda to come in and put themselves in better position for the start of the next stage rather than getting some stage points. But Byron had enough track position ahead of the guys deeper in the pack to stay inside the top 10 by the time he completed his pit stop. He cycled back as the leader to start off stage number 2, actually on the front row, because a couple drivers like Christopher Bell stayed out. But Byron took advantage of it with those fresher tires, took the lead, and drove off until he had to make his next pit stop until towards the end of the stage. And he was able to get some stage points in that one as well. And by the time we got to the final stage, he took the lead and was in control the rest of the race, even when everyone had to make green flag pit stops. He was the man out front. He was managing his tires at the very end of the race, saving that fuel because he had to pit a little bit earlier, like a few other drivers, and they were tight on the fuel window. The fuel window, 20 to 22 laps for all the cars at Circuit of the Americas, but Byron had enough fuel and tires to hold on for the victory, despite a charge late in the race by Christopher Bell to get up there and try to get Byron out of the way for the win. Byron held him off and got his second win of the season. I mean, this William Byron kid, the last couple years, folks, is really turning into a star. Ever since he got that first career win at Daytona in the night race in 2020, he's getting better and better and better by each season. 2021, he got his first win with Rudy Fugle atop the pit box. Then he had his first multi-winning season in 2022. And last year became a championship contender, winning more races than anybody. And he was able to make the championship 4. Although he didn't win it, he gained a lot from that experience. And this year, he starts off the season winning the Great American Race, and now he is the first repeat winner of 2024. And there are more wins coming down the road for this guy. They just got to keep up the momentum and keep up the consistency. If they can do that, who's stopping him? Other than maybe his teammate Kyle Larson or some of these other Toyota drivers. I mean, who knows what happens with their other teammates when they start to win some races and get up there and maybe competing for more wins down the road. What happens if the Fords start to get a little bit of a rally, especially with Ryan Blaney carrying the ship for them right now? There's still a lot of questions to answer as we go through the season, but right now, William Byron, so far, looks like the car to beat week in and week out when he has the consistency, the cars, and the finishes to go along with that. And yesterday, there was no doubt he was the best car. So, tip of the hat to William Byron, Rudy Fugle, and the 24 team on their dominant win at COTA yesterday. Number 2, Bell falls short and kind of pisses off a couple drivers. Christopher Bell has turned into a very good road course racer. He's been very, very strong the past few weeks. Off the win at Phoenix, had a great car at Bristol last week, but faded late when he pushed his tires a little too far, but was able to rally to get a top 10. Yesterday, he looked to be almost as equal as William Byron at times, but he was not the guy at the very end to beat William Byron. Bell took a little bit of a strategy towards the end of stage 1 to stay out and get the stage win to accumulate another bonus point to his points tally for this season. Then at the start of stage 2, he took the green flag, then he fell deep in the pack on the Warren tires and had a run-in with Kyle Larson in the 5 car, sending the 5 car around and kind of ruining his race the rest of the way. But Bell, despite all that, was still able to stay up with the leaders for the majority of the race, even though he was on a relatively different pit strategy compared to guys like Byron and Reddick and Ty Gibbs and Ross Chastain and those guys. But Bell still showed the speed yesterday, and he was able to get back up towards the leaders in the beginning of the final stage. But he also had another run-in with another Kyle, and that was Kyle Busch at the top of the hill at turn 1, where he got into him and sent the 8 car around and cost Kyle Busch a possible top 5 result. Bell was able to pit, come in and get his tires, and then was able to charge up late through the field to try to run down William Byron. He got by Alex Bowman, he got by his teammate Tyler Reddick with about 3 laps to go, but it was too little too late. If he had gotten closer to Reddick and Bell and maybe if he gotten closer to Gibbs with maybe 4 laps to go and past him, then who knows what would have happened, because he had the fresher tires and he had a little bit more fuel in his tank than William Byron did. But unfortunately, being on a different pit strategy sometimes can hurt you. It was a good result nonetheless, but you wish you could have had a little bit more. Unfortunately, all that stuff did not end for Christopher Bell, as he was in a discussion on pit road with Kyle Busch, who approached Bell and said, dude, that was uncalled for. How many times, he was not happy with Christopher Bell about what happened at the top of the hill, and he said, you got one coming to you. So be on the lookout for retaliation in the near future from Kyle Busch to Christopher Bell. I mean, did Bell make a mistake? Yes. I don't think he meant to do it, but Kyle Busch saw it a different way compared to Christopher Bell. So you got to take it a little bit easy, especially when you're racing around the guys that have a lot of experience, that have the championships, and have a lot more race wins. And even though Bell is starting to become a race winner in the Cup Series with about 5 wins in his pocket now, like he's won a couple races, he still needs to learn how to race around these guys with a little more respect at times. What he did at the top of the hill, getting into Kyle Busch, that was on him. And unfortunately, Kyle Busch confronted post-race and let him know how he felt about it. So he's got to learn to try to control that aggressiveness just a little bit. And hopefully, down the road, he'll gain more respect from his racing peers. But a nice runner-up finish yesterday for Christopher Bell. Unfortunately, just fell a little bit short, and those run-ins kind of hurt him a little bit yesterday. Number 3, solid run by Gibbs. Ty Gibbs continues to impress in his second full-time season in the Cup Series. He's been off to a great start this year, running competitively, finishing in the top 5, top 10, leading a lot of laps. Had the car to beat last week until he faded late with the tires beginning to go away, and he was one of the drivers, unfortunately, that got bit in the final long run of that race last week, even though he was able to rally for a top 10 finish. Then we go to yesterday, where he ran top 5 a lot of the race, actually led a couple laps up at the front of the pack, but it just didn't really seem to have anything for the 24 car of William Byron, especially on the long runs. Towards the end of the race, Gibbs was also, until his teammate was able to make a pass on him with 3 laps to go, he was also trying to get in the lead of William Byron, but it was just too little too late, and he was too busy racing with guys like Alex Bowman and Christopher and his teammate. It just wasn't able to get up there. But Gibbs has really shown that he's becoming a very solid Cup driver right now. I mean, again, it is only a matter of time before this kid breaks through and gets his first career win. He's still searching for it. He could win maybe next weekend. He could win 2 weeks from now. He is running competitively up at the front and learning by running around the guys that have been up front on a consistent basis the last few years, like Byron, Larson, Blaney, Hamlin, Truex, Bell, all those guys. He's really learning around all these top dogs right now. Just be a little more consistent, and hopefully, if the cars are, if the chips fall on the table, and if things go your way at the very end of the race, you will be in position to get your first career win. He had a car that looked like he could have done it yesterday, but particularly in those long runs, the 24 car was killer, and there was no stopping him. But a nice run nonetheless by Ty Gibbs in the 54 team. Number 4, solid results for Alex Bowman and our defending race winner of this event, Tyler Reddick. Alex Bowman, last 2 races, he's really gotten his act together. Started out the season again with a runner-up finish in the 500. Then he went to a streak where they really weren't performing that well, and they weren't running as well as their teammates were. Then last weekend, they extended the stint late at Bristol and were able to get a top 5 out of it. Yesterday, they didn't qualify so well, but they started passing cars through the field. They had a good car, particularly on the long runs. And at times, he was beginning to eat into his teammates' lead at the beginning of the final stage. Bowman had a really good race car, But I think Byron was able to negotiate through all the S's and all those turns better than Alex did, and Alex just kind of faded, especially with the tires that he was, pushing, trying to catch up to his teammate. And on top of that, you had to battle the two Gibbs guys that were also trying to run down your teammate. But 2 weeks of top 5 finishes for Alex Bowman, it's giving him some momentum and giving him that confidence. Remember, he's coming off a season where he injured his back in a sprint car accident last year and wasn't the same after that. He didn't make the playoffs. He didn't win a race. It just seemed like he kind of lost his mojo. Now he's starting to get a little bit of it back. With 3 top 5s in the first 6 races of the season, it's a good start to hit for 2024. He'll get back to victory lane eventually. Could be next weekend at a track where he's won it before. But 2 weeks in a row, top 5s for Alex Bowman. They're getting confidence and they're getting closer to running up front and competing for more wins. And then you've got Tyler Reddick, who won last year's race in a wreck fest all towards the very end of that thing until they were able to take that white flag and he cruised home to a victory lane that was big for him and also big for 23XI. It looked like he had times yesterday, had a car that could have won the race for 23XI Racing. He had a good car in the long runs in the first stage. Second stage just kind of faded a little bit, and by the time the final stage got going, he kind of slipped back a little bit and lost that track position and couldn't really recover it with the top leaders, but he was able to get a top 5, a 5th place finish out of that. So a good run nonetheless for Tyler Reddick and the 45 team. They're also starting to get momentum on their side after the last couple of races where they haven't been finishing well. Of course, they had 2 rough races to start the season. Then they got that top 5 at Las Vegas, runner-up to Kyle Larson trying to run him down. And then you've got the Phoenix race where they had consistent speed and finish in the top 10. Last week, they kind of had a little bump in the road despite showing some speed. Yesterday, they had speed, just didn't fall their way at the very end, but a good result for him. Like Bowman, if Reddick can have more consistent runs and build that confidence and start to put it together at the very end of his races, he'll win some races and he could be a championship contender by the time we reach the playoffs. So good runs by both Bowman and Reddick yesterday. And number 5, strategy and long green flag runs. That was the name of the game yesterday for Circuit of the Americas. We only had 2 cautions yesterday. They were the stage breaks. We had no incidents on the track. Well, yes, we had the occasional spins in the corners and other straightaways here and there, but there weren't enough major spins to generate any type of caution to change the outcome of the race yesterday. It was basically clean and green all day, even with those spins. They kept going. Everybody was on differing strategies during the first 2 stages where drivers decided to come in and pit early and sacrifice some stage points unless they had a good gap compared to everybody else in the field where they were running with the other guys that were staying out trying to get to those stage points to try to build themselves points for us. So like, if we can't have a solid day, let's at least get some stage points going forward. A couple drivers that finished inside the top 10 in those stages were able to get some good results. Of course, we all know William Byron, he was able to get some stage points and still win the race. Christopher Bell won stage 1, he was able to finish in 2nd place. You had Denny Hamlin win stage number 2, but he faded late in the race and finished in the 14th in the 14th spot. So kind of how things go, especially on road courses when things are clean and green. But yesterday was also a day where drivers were really fighting these race cars. They were all over the place negotiating themselves with the S's. A lot of drivers had some issues, especially in the S's, that they ran off the track, off the curbing, they would have to suffer a pass-through penalty. And a couple drivers had that happen to them yesterday. I take an issue with that and think that we don't need a pass-through penalty for somebody that misses a corner in the S's. I think there should be a penalty, but not a pass-through. There should at least be a stop and go, or at 5 seconds to your position on the racetrack compared to whoever you're running against. Like, yeah, it's like a Formula 1 rule, but still, I mean, having somebody come serve a pass-through penalty for missing a corner in the S's is just, it's not right. I don't like it at all. I'm not a fan of it. I mean, you look at the Roval, if you miss the chicane of the backstretch or miss any other corner where there's track limits, you just got to come to a complete stop. You do that, and then you get back going. I think that's how it should be the next time we come back to Circuit of the Americas, which definitely looks like we are, according to the NASCAR officials and the NASCAR executives talking about bringing COTA back. Looks like it's going to happen. But I would consider doing a 5-second time penalty or stop and go penalty at a certain section of the track to slow down and pay your debt to the NASCAR officials for missing the S's. Don't make them come down pit road and serve a pass-through penalty. It hurt a lot of guys yesterday, like Chase Elliott, because he was in the top 5 when his car got loose in the S's late in the race, and he had to serve a pass-through and cost himself a top 5 finish. I mean, what is he supposed to do when the car's loose right there? A lot of guys had that stuff happen. Brian Kozlowski had it happen to him. So I would have given someone brief stop on the racetrack, stop and go, or 5-second time penalty, not a pass through. But these drivers had to work hard yesterday. I will also say this. I love the NASCAR, how NASCAR moved the restart box closer to the exit of the final corner onto the front stretch rather than the restart box being in the middle of the straightaway heading towards the start finish line up the hill. Because last year, you saw when we had the restart box closer to the start finish line, everybody was bunched up together, coming in the line and going up the hill, and they were all running to each other like a demolition derby. This time, it was a lot more tame on these restarts, with the restart box being closer to coming off the exit of 20. That's where the restart box was. Everybody went up the hill. Yes, they were still fanning out, but they were fairly well separated, and we didn't have a lot of collisions up there. Really, we had none at all yesterday. Had a few of them in the Xfinity and truck race, but not as much as we didn't have as much as we wanted to, and I'm glad that happened. So I'm glad that NASCAR made the decision to move the restart box back to off the final corner, heading onto the main straightaway. And these drivers yesterday, as I mentioned, with only 2 cautions, they had their hands full, and they were very exhausted climbing out of their cars yesterday. Corey LaJoie had to be helped to the medical center because he just was exhausted. He collapsed and had to be taken on a stretcher. Thankfully, he was okay. And then Michael McDowell, he lost his power steering. That thing was a handful for him yesterday, negotiating through all those corners, left, right, all day long, and not being up to speed with everybody else because you had to fight that car with your hands because of how hard it is. When you lose power steering, you have to put the control in the drivers, and your arms are exhausted. That would have been a big workout for Michael McDowell yesterday. But fairly tame race, not a lot of chaos, but then again, we didn't have a lot of chaos yesterday, but I'm glad we didn't, and we got ourselves a fairly tame race yesterday. Now we are off to Richmond, Virginia next Sunday night. We're going under the lights, baby, for our second short track race of the season. It's going to be very interesting to see all these guys managing their tires and finding out what strategy, whether it's a short stint or a long stint, will benefit some of these guys to stay up front versus trying to stay on the lead lap or trying to get into a free pass spot. It's going to be a very entertaining race next Sunday night, being under the lights on Easter Sunday, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So I'm very interested to see what happens next weekend. Will Chris Buescher back up his win from last summer? Will Denny Hamlin win once again at what is considered his home track? Or will Martin Truex Jr. be able to get his short track mojo back with a win next weekend? We'll see. It's going to be a very interesting race under the lights, and I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I hope you all have a wonderful Easter weekend. Subscribe, like. Congrats once again to William Byron and the 24 team on their big win yesterday at COTA. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!